Very good morning to you, everyone. As you may or may not know, my name is Alan Bowditch. From the beginning of April, I am now the new president of Engage Estero. Jim Gilmartin, the former president, is now the chairperson of the board of Engage Estero. So welcome this morning. Well, we have, as you probably have seen, quite an action-packed presentation group of people here today. In fact, we're going to start with Dr. Bloomston, who is the medical director of the Florida Center for Pancreatic Diseases at Lee Health. Dr. Bloomberg is a particular expert, and we're delighted to have him here. I know that yesterday, as he mentioned to me, he was stretched with a number of particular emergencies, and we are very, very grateful to him for being here today to give up his time to talk to us about an issue which, of course, all of us, I'm sure, either have family members or friends, and hopefully not ourselves, who sometimes get confronted with the big C. It's, of course, very distressing for everyone concerned. And indeed, pancreatic cancer itself, of course, is a particular concern. Those of you who watch TV may remember that Alex Trebek, of course, was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer, but persevered very well for some 20 months before he sadly passed. And, although perhaps not everyone has that opportunity with stage 4 to live that long, I think Dr. Bloomstone will obviously explain what the Center for Excellence and the developments that have been put in place by Lee Health in pancreatic cancer treatment actually is able to accomplish. So I'd very much like to ask Dr. Bloomberg to come up and give us his talk.
Thanks, Alan. So as you mentioned, my name is Mark Bloomston. I'm a surgical oncologist. I'm actually from Fort Myers, grew up here, as some of you had asked earlier. And I was gone most of my adult life doing with an academic career, and then came back home back in 2015. And it's really this disease of pancreatic cancer that has really driven my career and drove me home. Because the operations that are involved with this cancer in particular, but a lot of the advanced GI cancers are quite complicated, and we haven't had that expertise in Southwest Florida really ever. And so it was kind of a unique opportunity for me to come home and start to develop a team. And you'll see some of what we've done here. I don't take full credit for, but I'm glad to be part of really a great team that does a tremendous volume of work now. And I think you guys would be pretty impressed by the level of care that we're able to provide here in Southwest Florida. And then I did recently join Lee Health, so now I'm employed by Lee Health over the last few months, which has been a nice marriage now to help really develop our Center of Excellence and our programs in general. A couple of disclosures. I'm a surgeon, so beware. I don't have any financial disclosures, but I do have some operative photos. So luckily there's no food associated with this meeting today. So what is pancreatic cancer? Well, it's aggressive. We know this. This really means that it spreads early, and it can grow into nearby structures that make treating it quite difficult. It's silent. The symptoms are often vague. People tell me, so what am I looking for? I'm like, boy, it's really hard to tell. Sometimes it's some aches and pains, a little bit of weight loss, things like that. When people turn jaundice, of course, they go to the doctors always when they've turned jaundice, where they turn yellow. But some of these other things seem like the aches and pains of life. It's indiscriminate. It doesn't care what your gender is. It doesn't care what your race is. People don't cause themselves to have pancreatic cancer. Truly, they're innocent bystanders in this whole event. And there's not really great modifiable risk factors other than smoking and obesity. We know about that. That counts for pretty much all of our diseases. But is it hopeless? Not necessarily. And it gets a lot of bad press for good reason. But we do see cures. This is a curable cancer. If it's caught early enough, removed. We have I'll show you some of our data with chemotherapy adjuncts. This is a curable cancer if we do it the right way, and we're getting better and better at it. So this, in general, this is kind of what we're talking about. Pancreatic cancer, most of them arise from this small little duct that's in the middle of the pancreas called ductal adenocarcinomas. They can occur anywhere in the pancreas. No matter where it occurs, it's the same exact cancer. They tend to be a little worse when they come on the left side because they're more silent. They tend to be caught a little earlier on the right side because people turn jaundice. But by and large, it's the same exact cancer. Pancreatic cancer, some of the not so fun facts here is that it is the fourth leading cause of cancer deaths in the United States, and that continues to creep up and up and up. In Florida, it's also one of the more common cause of cancer-related deaths, but Florida ranks number 2 in the country for pancreatic cancer deaths, even though it's only the 4th in population. I mean, that owes to the general demographics of our state in general, and reasons that people may move to Florida, maybe because of ill health and things like that. But by and large, this is clearly a public health problem. We haven't made great strides. So now we say 8% survival. When I started my training, it was 4% survival. So we've doubled our life expectancy, but we'll all agree that's pretty dismal still. And the reason for that is how people present. When you present with an early, localized, or maybe regional, meaning getting into some of the lymph nodes, your survival is much, much better than if you present with metastatic disease or distant disease. The problem is the vast majority of people do present with this more advanced disease. So that's what I'm talking about. If we can get people in earlier, get their tumors out, then we got a fighting chance. So what does it take to get it out? Well, the surgery is complex. It's morbid, has lots of complications that can be associated with it. It depends upon the anatomy, I'll show you here in a second, but it is the only hope for cure. So even in 2025, as barbaric as it may seem, we're still doing big operations to manage this disease. And here's just a peek at the anatomy from the front and then from the back. Over here this would be as if someone's facing you. So left side over here is your spleen, tail of the pancreas, head of the pancreas, that's kind of the business part of it. Duodenum is the first part of the intestine. And then you got these important blood vessels that if you flip around to the back side, you can see all of our blood goes through this. This is the portal vein going up to the liver, the main blood supply of the liver. And you have the artery going to the spleen. This is cut off, but that's the artery going down to your intestine. So it doesn't take much for a cancer to go right back and grab those vessels, and then we have a little harder situation to deal with. This is the kind of the poster child operation for pancreatic cancer, the so-called Whipple. This is for tumors on the right side. So here you have your liver, your stomach, the intestine. This is the tumor here in the head of the pancreas. You can see the dotted lines. These are all the organs that we divide: bile duct, gallbladder, intestine, stomach, the pancreas itself. All of that is removed. Then we bring the intestine back to hook it back together. So this is what it looks like inside an actual human. So here's your pancreas attachment. Here's your bile duct attachment. This comes around, attaches to the stomach over here. So it's a big, complicated operation that has about 100 steps. Doesn't matter what order you do it in, as long as you get it all done. So really what determines whether we can do this or not is assessing the resectability. And that has to do, one, if it's already spread. So if it's already spread, surgery has a very limited role. But if we're confined to the pancreas still, it hasn't gone to other organs, then we assess for resectability based upon the involvement with the blood vessels. And they're pretty defined here, but an experienced pancreatic surgeon looks at the scan a little more different than the radiologist does to get some of these answers. And here's an example of a CAT scan. So this is someone laying flat on their back with their feet coming at us. Over here is going to be our tumor. And you see this big white circle here? That's that blue vein that I showed you about on the back of the pancreas on its way up to the liver. Perfectly round. You can see a little black line around it. This is a resectable tumor. That tumor's not invading that vein. And here's this a little zoomed up version. Now so when you take them to the operating room, here we are. This is the vein right here, cleaned up. Here's where the pancreas is being cut, peeled off of that vein. And here's the artery that I also showed you going to the intestine. So we clean out all that area to get not just the tumor, but we want to get out the tissues where that cancer likes to go. We want to remove all the cells, whether we can see them or not. Then you have a more advanced situation. On the left side, we call this a borderline resectable. Same tumor, but you don't see a perfectly nice little circle there anymore because that vein has been squashed by the tumor, and this artery still looks okay. So it's not completely encircled, so that's borderline resectable. We're not sure. Compared to one that we call locally advanced, where the vein's gone and the artery is completely surrounded by tumor as well. This one probably can't get out. So, but we're getting better at getting into a situation where we can get them out. But here's an example of one where I've flipped the pancreas up. So in this situation, I'm taking out the entire pancreas. Yes, you can live without your pancreas. So this is that vein being sucked in by the tumor. So we can remove all that. Here's that segment of vein on the specimen on the back table, and then sew it back together. So if we do that, if we are able to give somebody chemotherapy who didn't seem to have a removable tumor, but then got them to the point where we can remove them, well, then their survivals are similar as someone who we could remove it from the very beginning. So as long as we can get it out, whatever it takes to get to that point, we got a shot. So how do we do that? Well, chemotherapy helps us in those situations, and we're using chemo more and more. But watch the evolution of progress for pancreatic cancer. Colorectal, so let's say 1990 is a starting point. As we go forward, 10 years later, we added one drug to each regimen. Gemcitabine and 5-FU are basically the same type of drug. We move forward. For really 20, 30 years now, gemcitabine has been the workhorse chemotherapy drug for pancreatic cancer, even though it was approved by the FDA, not because it improved survival, but that it slowed down the decrease in the quality of life. It's the one and only time the FDA has ever approved a drug that was shown not to make a big difference. And they've never done it since. But look at all the other drugs that came online for colorectal cancer in the same interim, both GI tract. Colon sits right next to the pancreas. So again, a couple of years later, so this is when we started to see some movement with pancreatic cancer, was in 2012. I'll show you that data in a minute. But now fast forward, we got a couple more drugs. These kind of haven't made a huge difference, but are all FDA approved and recommended for this cancer, whereas we got too numerous to count for colorectal now. So we're making progress in some, very slow progress in pancreatic cancer. But this is that 2012 difference when we took our workhorse chemo, gemcitabine, and compared it to this new regimen of 3 chemo drugs put together. And for the first time ever in pancreatic cancer, we saw significant improvement in survival. These are survival curves. So you have your gemcitabine down here, and you see this big shift to the right. That's a big difference in survival. Even though that's still measured in months, it was the first time that we've ever seen this blow the doors off in gemcitabine. But to me as a surgeon, what got interesting is that for the first time, if you look in here, this is response rate. 31% of the tumors shrunk. It's the first time we've ever seen a pancreatic cancer decrease in size when given chemotherapy. So now surgeons got excited because maybe we can take some of these people that weren't potentially curable and put them in the right bucket. So at the same time, that was a French study, at the same time in the U.S., we were adding a new drug to gemcitabine. This is a study that went on at the same exact time, but also, very thankfully, was a big improvement in survival. And I know it doesn't look like much, but that's a huge improvement right there. And similarly, we saw responses. This is 29% versus 8%. So again, we're seeing tumors start to respond. That gives us hope. So how do we make the unresectable resectable? So we're talking about tumors that are what we call locally advanced, swallowing up those vessels, or borderline resectable, pushing against those vessels. And so we instead of calling them the traditional type of nomenclature, we labeled them as, could this ever be removed if it responds, or is there just absolutely no way it ever will be? And then we gave them these drug regimens for at least 4 months, ideally even up to 6 months, or however long it took, checked every couple months to make sure we were still doing the right thing and it wasn't actually getting worse. And if we needed to, we added some radiation, whatever it took to get him to the operating room. And we planned on removing those blood vessels if it was safe and made sense. To show you exactly what we're talking about. So on the left side, these are CAT scans prior to treatment. Here is a tumor surrounding that vein, pushing around, partially surrounding that artery. We would put this in the potentially resectable category. Gave him the chemotherapy, let go of the vein, a little bit of residual inflammation back here, but completely let go of the vein. So now we could take him. We were planning on having to remove the blood vessels, but when we got in there, we didn't have to because that little teeny tiny plaque was all that was left attached to the vein. And when we cut that little plaque out there, it was dead. So now we're taking patients who never would have operated on the past and giving them a hope for cure. I didn't show all the data. That was actually a published paper we had when I was at Ohio State. And we saw a dramatic improvement in survival. We saw many more patients getting to the operating room and getting through those surgeries to now have a chance at cure. What are our concerns with doing these operations? Well, complications are common. Up to 40% of patients can have complications from their surgeries. Maybe that's a leak from the pancreas or the bile duct or the stomach, wherever we're operating. Infections are always everyone's concern. Fluid collections, infection in the wound, pneumonias, hemorrhage. Thankfully, it's pretty rare for us to give any blood transfusions during these operations. Nutrition is a problem for everybody. It always gets better, but it's not necessarily dangerous, but it is very annoying for patients who just can't eat well. And everyone has a little problem of eating afterwards. It always gets better, but it can be very, very scary when you're dropping weight and you have no control over it. But it does get better. Fatigue. I tell patients plan on 6 to 12 months of recovery from these operations, particularly the Whipple operation. It takes the wind out of your sails, but it gets better. And of course, we're always worried about the cancer coming back. We can't declare victory when the patient's still in the recovery room. That takes time. So as we follow patients over and as more time gets behind us, we feel better and better that it's less likely to come back. So what do we do to mitigate all those problems? Well, you have to do that with volume. You have to do that with experience. And this is a famous study back in the early 2000s by Berkmeyer et al. About what the difference is in experience. Believe it or not, prior to this, just 20 years ago, nobody really appreciated that you had to do something a lot in the operating room to get good at it. It seems so intuitive now, but they really didn't think about it. And so this is one of the first studies. This is specific to pancreas here, but they went through all the major things, esophagus, stomach, all the major dangerous cancers and big operations. And you can see here, they ranked hospitals based upon very low volume. They did less than one a year, to very high volume, greater than 16 cases a year. That still doesn't seem like a lot, right? But that's what's considered high volume for pancreas surgery. And you can see how the mortality from the operation gets dramatically better and the survival gets better as well. You start to see longer survival. So it's not just the technical part of getting someone through the operation, it's the group of people you put together to help manage all the issues that come with that. So you can see here that they said that the observed association between hospital volume and operative mortality are largely mediated by the surgeon volume. So you want someone who's experienced. Patients can often improve their chances of survival substantially, even at high volumes, by selecting the high volume surgeons within the high volume institution. And that's usually kind of a given. So what are we doing here locally? Well, here's 2015 when we started. That was my first year here in town. Prior to that, we did on average less than one Whipple operation per year amongst the 4 Lee Health hospitals. So you can see our volumes now. We're well over 100 that we do every year. And I think most people involved in the Lee Health program will tell you that it's a well-oiled machine because there's a lot of great providers that are involved in this. Great. This is part of a slide from a previous talk about as my partners came on board. So blue is just me, and then I added my orange partner and then my gray partner. But we share the wealth, as you can see. So they're much younger than me, so they're building up. But so this led to a pancreatic cancer center of excellence. So we already had all the pieces in town. We, of course, this is already all the providers that they do the surgery. Of course, it was a smaller group. The medical oncologists that give chemo, the radiation oncologists, they give the radiation, and we're able to put an umbrella over them and make sure that we meet the criteria to now gain our designation by the National Pancreas Foundation as a Pancreatic Cancer Center of Excellence. So this came several years ago, and it's a partnership between Lee Health and a lot of the community partners, Florida Cancer Specialists, Genesis Care, Advocate, et cetera. And you can see here what the purpose is. And the NPF says Centers of Excellence are the premier healthcare facilities that focus on the multidisciplinary treatment of pancreas diseases, particularly pancreatic cancer, utilizing a whole patient approach. So we brought together our resources that were already here. And so we kind of codify this and put it under one umbrella so that everyone can now have some focus on the pancreas. So we have great nutrition and rehab versus prehab. So we're putting people in physical therapy before they get their treatment, right at diagnosis if it's necessary, palliative care, symptom management, survivorship, etc. And then not only do we want to bring that to our patients, we want to also attract more resources. We want more good providers in town. We want this to be a destination not just for patients, but for caregivers. And also we want to bring the latest technology as well. So that's come to clinical trials, etc. So I have some examples of some of the great, cool new things that we're doing for pancreas cancer. One focuses on early detection. So you maybe saw a little news thing recently where we talked about this so-called pancreas pap smear. It's very hard to look at the ducts inside the pancreas. You can't get a needle into them. So we're always looking for ways to assess, are those ducts abnormal? And do we need to intervene early before they get a cancer? Is that possible? Well, here's one thing that shows a little bit of promise, something called LINFU, low-intensity, non-focused ultrasound. Basically, you put an ultrasound across the patient's abdomen, and the low frequency vibrates the pancreas itself. And then we inject little microscopic bubbles so that those cells start to vibrate. And hopefully will start to slough, where we can then stimulate the pancreas to excrete them, put a camera down there to collect them, and then they get a cytologist to look at them under a microscope for us. So here's a little cartoon of that. You can see this is the ductal cell here, and these are the ultrasound waves coming in. Little bubbles start to vibrate. Now you start to see these cells popping off, but then you'll get an entire sheet of cells that'll be sloughed. Those can now be collected, and the pathologist can look at them under the microscope. Now we have enough cells to look at the architecture, but now we also have enough cells that we can do special stains on them, look at markers, look at genetic markers. So a lot of hope here. We're doing all this now in the context of a clinical trial. Local therapies we use for established cancers. One of these is called an irreversible electroporation. This literally shocks a tumor. We put needles into the tumor. You could see them being done here in the operating room, where we put needles into the tumor, put high voltage through this, up to 3,000 volts that we will pulsate through the tumor itself, which basically opens up little pores in the cell membrane of these cancer cells. And these will then start to die off, but they die off in a way that doesn't cause a lot of inflammation. So the pancreas and the body don't over-respond to it. And it's not using any thermal energy, so it's not hot, it's not cold. It's utilizing its own cell's own machinery against them. And so it's able to preserve the normal anatomy of the structures around it, the blood vessels, etc. This is the new kid on the block, histotripsy. This one's, we have this coming to see us this summer. And I'm personally excited about this because this uses ultrasounds to destroy tumors. So we're able to destroy tumors, literally liquefy the tumors without a needle, without a knife. This goes through the skin. I'll show you a little something here, but no needles, no incisions, no hot, no cold. Liquefies the tumors just by bouncing radio waves off of them. but we do enough waves in enough direction that where they all intersect vibrates so hard that it makes little bubbles that you can't see explode and blow the cells apart.
Where the cells go?
The cells are gone, but the contents are there. So hold on to that thought because it's a good question. But because what happens is we leave in there all the proteins. So those are what we call antigens. This is what makes our immune system specific. So now the immune system can identify proteins that are specific to a pancreatic cancer and go find others to kill. So now we can start to see tumors that we haven't treated responding. And that's already been shown in humans. So here's the apparatus. This is a robotic kind of a procedure here. A water bath here. This is our planning station here. Here's the patient laying down, and the arm, which is controlled by a robot, laying over it. So zoomed in, there's a little water bath here that kind of shapes to the patient's body. This is the liver here because right now this has been approved for the liver, but is being studied in pancreas. And now we can put those radio waves through it. And so I have several videos. So I shot these videos when I was learning about this thing. But this is underwater. This is the little piece of meat inside of this auger. And they're basically hitting it with the radio waves, and it's exploding. And here it is at the finished product. I don't know if you saw that open up there. We bring it back. Here's where they cut it open, and it's literally liquefied. But just comes pouring out. And this is the normal blood vessels in there, so it didn't destroy anything good inside there. So I'll leave that. It's amazing. I mean, it truly is amazing. So this is being studied in pancreatic cancer now. It's already been done in humans. I'm looking forward to us having an opportunity. The company is excited about our program and wants us to participate in the next clinical trial. So to summarize, hopefully I'm not running late, pancreatic cancer is still a lethal disease, but it is treatable, and it's getting more and more treatable every year. Surgical resection still is our best shot at curing it. If we get the tumor out, we have a fighting chance. Chemotherapy helps make that possible. It helps increase our chances of getting someone to the operating room and helps minimize the chance of the cancer coming back once we've removed it. Our best outcomes come in high-volume centers, such as our Center of Excellence here in Fort Myers. And new methods of early detection and adjuncts to resection are coming online every single year. And we have really all of the cutting-edge stuff here now, so there is hope. Thank you very much.
So, patient or person look for, or what are the signs that you should be aware of?
Yeah, this is the scary part. You came in just after that slide. But this is the thing that drives us crazy, is because a lot of the aches and pains of life could be something significant. I always tell people, you got to pay attention. You should not be feeling poorly all the time. You should not be losing weight unexpectedly. If you are not eating well, there's a reason for that. And maybe it's just your appetite's changed, but it's worth a scan at least. And that may just be a CAT scan. But generally, those are the things. People will have vague upper abdominal pain. They'll notice that their intake of calories has trailed off and they're starting to lose weight. Losing weight is really a big deal. And I know all of our doctors are always asking about our weight, so it's something to pay attention to. My dad started losing weight. I got a CAT scan on him immediately. Made sure everything was all right. That's all right. Just eat more. Because appetites change, things change, our bodies change. But jaundice, though, face turns very yellow, urine turns very dark, stool become very light. I think everybody in their right mind would probably seek medical care in that situation. That's definitely a warning sign. Yes, sir.
For early detection, a lot of us have annual physicals. Is there anything in your typical annual physical that can detect early that this might be coming on?
Yeah, I would say just from the media that what can we look for on physical examination for early detection? The short answer is not really. There's not really a blood test that we can use to detect early. There are tumor markers, we call them, that are proteins that are released by certain types of tumors that happen to be proteins that come from normal cells as well. So it's not like the PSA for prostate cancer that everyone knows about. The tumor marker for pancreatic cancer is a lousy screening agent. It's not a very good marker at all. So I don't recommend that for a screen. So what we do is we try to, obviously listening to our patients and pick up on little subtle things. A subtle thing would be if someone develops diabetes unexpectedly. They don't have a family history, they're not obese, they're healthy otherwise, and they get diabetes out of the blue. I found that very astute PCPs will get a scan on them because that may be the sign that there's something in there messing with the pancreas. Or if you suddenly have what we call pancreatic exocrine insufficiency, you don't have the enzymes to help you in digestion. That might come from the pancreas. Those little things, those are still fairly dramatic. So there's not real subtle things. You can't feel it, can't measure for it. You just got to listen. We try to identify people with risk factors, so strong family history. People who have cysts in their pancreas, which about 10% of adults do. Those can be precancerous, and a fraction of those will become cancerous. So we have a screening clinic for those high-risk patients where we'll do a scan on them. We're starting to do lympho on them, and then we'll follow manually. And sometimes we even go down with a camera and look more closely as well. Yes, ma'am.
So when you do a CT scan and you see something on the pancreas, at that point you don't know whether it's just a benign cyst or a possibly malignant tumor.
Right. We don't exactly know. Depends on how the scans are done. Everything is a little different. CAT scans, for example, we always like to do IV contrast because how the blood flows through these things gives us a clue as to what they are. But certainly anything in the pancreas is bad. Not maybe the worst. It may not be a cancer, but it's something that needs to be at least watched closely and perhaps removed.
One more question.
Sure.
What % of the surgeries that you do are for neuroendocrine tumors?
Probably, it's kind of hard to guess. Maybe about, probably somewhere between 10 and 20%. Yeah, probably about that many. The operations are the same. The management's a little different, but the operations are the same. Yes, sir, yes. Yeah.
Any correlation to environmental conditions and specifically diet that might indicate a propensity for this cancer to be?
Yeah, the question is, how does your diet impact the risk of cancer? And it doesn't seem to be. A situation called chronic pancreatitis is considered a risk factor, and that's more associated with alcohol use or abuse. That correlation is not great. It's kind of a weak correlation at best, and more in old textbooks than anything. But no, we don't. As I said, this is kind of what's always given me an affinity for taking care of patients with this disease because they didn't cause it. We don't know what brought it on. Sugar doesn't. Smoking is a risk factor for everything. It's the only one that we know kind of crosses all the cancers. Obesity is also considered a risk factor, but it's not a clear, direct correlation. Thank you. I saw what you had a hand to, sir, back then.
You talk about early detection. Timeline, was that a month, 2 months, 6 months, 10 years?
I guess we don't really know the lifespan of a cancer, or how long it takes to become a cancer. We think it takes a couple of years, probably, for a cancer to develop. We don't know for sure because we'd never sit and watch one. But from the time it takes probably to have enough mutated cells to create a tumor that's able to be seen, it's probably about 2 years. So, which I try to emphasize that point when I do have patients come see me, because of course you hear about this, you immediately feel like you have a ticking time bomb inside of you and every day matters. And that's true to some extent, but we have time when we first learn about these to take the appropriate steps, do the appropriate workup, measure twice and cut once, as they say.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Is precision proton therapy on the horizon as a future strategy for treatment?
So proton therapy for pancreatic cancer, yes, it's on the horizon. So really we're talking about variations in radiation. And traditionally, radiation has not been very effective for pancreatic cancer. Protons carry a lot of promise to help radiation and work on a lot of different things. So I think a lot of that's to be determined. I think in certain situations, absolutely, radiation helps. You saw I told you that we use it sometimes. And protons should be a better version of that. The main thing about radiation for pancreatic cancer is it probably would work if we can do enough radiation, but it's surrounded by organs that are all very affected by the radiation. So the protons help in that regard and some of the other techniques, but it's hard to give enough radiation to a pancreatic cancer to really make a big difference.
Yeah, let's just take one.
Sure, okay.
How often do you remove the entire pancreas, and is that effective?
Removing an entire pancreas is no more benefit than removing a part of the pancreas for an established cancer. Where we have to remove the entire pancreas, and it's uncommon, but I still do it probably a couple times a year. The reason that we would do it is more the logistics of being able to get a tumor out based upon its location in the pancreas. Sometimes it's on the left, sometimes it's on the right, sometimes it's on the middle, and why we're doing that operation. So we don't take out the whole pancreas to decrease our risk of getting a cancer to come back. We take out the whole pancreas in order to get that tumor out if it's dictated, or as a prophylaxis in somebody clearly that has a cancer, pancreas that's gonna make a cancer.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all very much.
I can't think of anyone that we've had here that has given us such an incredible insight into some of the advances that have been taking place in the cancer area. I'm personally very grateful to you. I know all of the people at Engage Estero are particularly grateful for your time, obviously your excellence at what you do. If there are any questions that we haven't been able to answer, if you'd like to let me know those, I definitely pass them on to Dr. Bloomston, who might be able to get back to me for you. But of course, he's a very busy person, and I'm, again, very grateful for your time this morning. Thank you. Thank you so much. Lots of questions. Well, the next speaker is Brian Hurwitz. Brian has been heading up a subsection of the Health Committee in the past, looking specifically at the cardiovascular area, and has now stepped into the breach to actually take on the chair of the Health Committee, which we have in Engage Estero. He's certainly worked with Engage Estero for a very long time, is very passionate about the whole area of cardiovascular health, and has certainly given a lot of attention to the use of CPAs and resuscitation, obviously bring people in to provide guidance on this, which of course is extremely important. I'd like to ask Brian to come up and give us his talk on this very intriguing and interesting development that he spotted a little while ago, which I thought was worthy of his time to come and tell us about it. So, Brian, thank you very much.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me, Alan.
Pleasure.
And for roping me in.
Good.
As you can see, I'm chair of Engage Estero Health Committee, and I'm the former head of, actually, I used to call it the Cardiac Health Committee. Alan calls it the Cardiovascular Committee, and I will defer to him. We were very interested in getting AEDs into all of our gated communities here in southwestern Florida. And this is working? Okay. To that end, we created an electronic survey, and we surveyed 34 communities. We got back a lot of responses about their AED placements. A number of communities had, they were very familiar with the AEDs. We met with their managers of the clubhouses or the presidents of associations, and we found that in some communities there was no AED awareness whatsoever. So this has become a particular focus of mine and of our committees. And my background is that I'm a retired professor of psychology and education, and I am an EMT. I'm a New York State certified EMT. Work with our volunteer fire department in the village in which I live, Hastings-on-the-Hudson, and have been to a number of cardiac arrests where AEDs were needed immediately, and where the outcome was tragic. If the AED is not there in a few minutes, there's a very low chance for survival. But to start, do you know the difference between a heart attack and a cardiac arrest?
I didn't know that's a difference.
There is a difference. The difference is that a heart attack is a plumbing problem, whereas a cardiac arrest is an electrical problem. I find that most people don't know these differences. With a heart attack, people know the signs. They feel sick the night before. They may be nauseous. There may be vomiting. Their skin color may look off. They just don't feel well. And with a heart attack, it's important to get somebody to a hospital immediately because it's a blood clot that's going to cut off oxygen to a part of the heart and will damage the heart. So you do need medical attention, but not immediately. But with a cardiac arrest, there's no warning. It happens suddenly. This is frightening stuff, because you generally don't know when it's going to happen. And it's this, let me just put the slide. What happens is, when the electrical system malfunctions, the heart starts to fibrillate.
Right.
What? The heart starts to fibrillate. And you need the defibrillator to restore the heart to normal functioning. The average EMS response time is 8 to 10 minutes. That's not quick enough. You really need somebody there within 5 minutes with an AED. The one hope is that the heart can be restored to its normal rhythm. So for every minute defibrillation is delayed, survival decreases by 7 to 10%. That's why people who suffer from a cardiac arrest generally don't make it, because we don't have the equipment close enough to them. It's not near enough. It doesn't get there quickly enough. I can't stress this enough. Only 10% of the people who suffer cardiac arrest survive. The American Heart Association likes to say it's 5 minutes from drop to shock. 5 minutes from the time that person passes out and is unresponsive to when a shock has to be administered. There's the typical AED. So a lot of this is dependent on the bystander, on you and on me, who will be willing to use that AED. Let me just back up for a minute. Now we go back here. Yeah. You see, there's a picture of an AED right there. Very simple to use. You'll see there's a pad. How do I get this little, how do I get the pointer to work, Alan?
There we go. There's the, it's that one
Right there. I got it. Thank you. You'll notice there's a pad in the upper right part of the chest, and there's a pad kind of below the heart on the left side, the rib cage on the left side. That's all you have to do is apply those pads. The AED tells you exactly what to do, and it will shock the heart back to its normal rhythm. Let's go to opioid deaths just for a minute, because immediate medical attention is needed as well here. There are 112,000 Americans lost their lives to drug overdoses, all due to fentanyl, which is a synthetic opioid. A major contributor to these fatalities It's often found in counterfeit pills or mixed in with other drugs. It's very much in the news recently. To save a life, Narcan is needed. Narcan is naloxone. It restores normal breathing until you can get somebody to a hospital, but it has to be administered immediately. Drones are actually a solution to these problems. If you can get an AED to somebody via drone, these drones can get there within 2 to 3 minutes of time. The epicenter for drone research actually began in Sweden at the Karolinska Institute. This is a medical school and has a center for resuscitation research. They're very interested in getting life-saving equipment to people and within a couple of minutes. Karolinska actually identifies the Nobel Prize winners in medicine and physiology each year. So what happened at the Center for Resuscitation Science, they partnered with Everdrone, which is a Stockholm startup company. Just to show you how effective this is, a drone was deployed to a 71-year-old suffering an out-of-hospital cardiac arrest. OHCA is an out-of-hospital cardiac arrest within 3 minutes of dispatch and before the paramedics arrived. The drones are directly linked to Sweden's 112 emergency dispatch system. When a cardiac arrest call is received, drones are automatically dispatched alongside ambulances. The initial trials were in western Sweden, in an area called Gothenburg, which is near Stockholm, and the system is being expanded across the country. The 112 system is similar to our 911 system. I'm going to give you, this is a video of Everdrone delivering an AED.
Interesting. Yep. There you go.
Is the sound on?
We'll check it. You want the sound on?
Want the sound on? Wait, we gotta put the sound on for a minute.
The AED is attached by a tether. You'll see it delivered.
They're associated with the Center for Resuscitation Science at Karolinska Institute. This takes us to the United States and to Duke University Medical School. There's a cardiologist there. Her name is Monique Starks. She's Harvard trained. She works at Duke. She's very interested in pioneering drone research here in the United States. She's pioneering evidence-based drone research. She's collecting data to show the effectiveness of these drones in delivering AEDs and other life-saving devices. I spent a long time on the phone with her. She's very pleasant to talk to, and she's only too happy to share information about her work. Here she is with one of her drones, and next to her is one of the pilots, the drone pilots, and Monique she's very interested in bringing AEDs to rural communities and to inner cities as well. Here she is with a research exchange at Karolinska Institute. She's all the way over to the right. Oh my gosh. Please go back here. How do I get this light working? The one at the bottom. The one at the bottom is the light. Yeah, that's out. Here's Monique. This is a group of researchers from Karolinska, and there are a bunch of paramedics from Toronto. There's a medical school in Toronto that's very involved in this kind of research. They all got together at Karolinska to share information. Here's just 2 pieces of her research. These are 2 articles. She's the principal investigator. There are a number of faculty members associated with her, but these are just 2 of her grants. Each one is more than $5 million. Developing, testing drone-delivered AEDs for cardiac arrests in rural America, evaluation of the requirements and critical features of a drone-deployed AED network to radically improve community-level survival after out-of-hospital cardiac arrests. Now, each of these grants has to have statistical analyses associated with them, or these agencies don't give you the money. And she's got about 5 or 6 of these. I read about her. There's a journal called Resuscitation. It's a European journal, and they mentioned her several times, and that's where I was led to Monique. And she she loves to share her connections and her information. And anytime I email her with a question, she gets right back to me. Let me just see what you got there. Yeah, I got it. Monique led me to Gordon Folks. Gordon Folks is an interesting guy. She's been featured in a Washington Post newspaper article with him. Gordon Folks was a student at Florida State University. In his early 20s, he came up with the idea and developed a small company called Sky Caddy that delivered beer to golf courses. Well, being at FSU, they loved the idea. They put him into their business incubator. And from there emerged the idea, why don't we attach AEDs to these drones with the beer? So Gordon, and I had a conversation with him also. We spent a while on the phone. Gordon begins a company called Archer First Response Systems. I think he came from a family with some money. His father gave him startup money to start this company. I don't know where the name Archer comes from. But what he's done is he's developed drones and software to attach. So he attaches these devices to his drones, and the drones deploy autonomously at the click of a button. They're deployed. You're going to see a video here in a minute from a docking station. The drone launches within seconds from a strategically placed docking station. It operates independently. It uses artificial intelligence, sensors, self-navigation to adjust flight path, to arrive at the scene of a cardiac arrest, opioid overdose, or trauma. That's why I mentioned opioid dosage and deaths at the beginning of the presentation, because these drones are now delivering this stuff. I just want you to see just take a look at this thing. Manatee County I'm going to almost end with Manatee County, and then take you to Lee because we are doing something here, but we're not as advanced. Manatee County partnered with Archer First Response Systems to provide a 911 integrated drone system. Manatee partnered with Tampa General Hospital, which provide a lot of the funding for what Manatee is doing. The drones now deliver AED, Narcan nasal spray, and tourniquets, and they have FAA approval. And here's the key to this. You can't fly these drones they have to be in your line of sight. You can't just have them flying around there autonomously without FAA approval, especially here in Lee, where we have RSW located. It took Gordon Folks, who's relentless. I saw his presentation before the Manatee Board of County Commissioners. He presented this along with Tampa General. Took him 4 years to get FAA approval for autonomous drone flight, and he has it. Here he is. Let's take a look at this video. Here's the docking station. You'll see the docking station. You'll see them putting the drone into the docking station, and then you'll see it take flight.
This video was for demonstration purposes. This is a demonstration, that's all it is.
These are heavy-duty drones. These are not the drones that you see people buy, as hobbyists. There's an AED, and I want to focus on that AED as well. And there's Narcan in the container. That AED is an Avive AED. It's a very advanced AED. Let me just stop this. I want to stop on this slide for a minute. I just want to talk about Avive AEDs because that brings me to Lee County here for a moment. Those Avive AEDs are remarkable. Bless you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Must be true.
It will be true. They're remarkable. The one you saw, that little thing, they talk to you. You can hold them in the palm of your hand. They attach to They attach to a wall in your home or in your clubhouse, and when you grab them, they will communicate with dispatch. Dispatch, they'll make the 911 call for you. Dispatch knows immediately that there's a cardiac arrest in vicinity. So if you have several of these in your community, they will communicate with each other. So everybody knows when there's a cardiac arrest occurring because of those little Avives. Lee County bought 197 of them and installed them in businesses and in libraries, in public parks.
Okay, check out. Hey.
And is hoping to get them installed in HOAs and gated communities. Manatee has deployed, is now in a trial. They're deploying drones at a 3.5 square mile radius, and now they're moving to 35 square miles.
Ryan.
Yeah.
Okay, I got 2 minutes. Question is, do you know where the AEDs are in your community or near where you live? I have 2 minutes. I spoke to Benjamin Albies yesterday, who's director of safety Director of EMS for Lee County. You're installing docking stations in North Lee County. They have permission to do that. They can't do it south because of RSW, and it interferes with the flight. But they're delivering Narcan and other life-saving devices. They're doing a proof of concept now. So the AED and the drones as first responder initiative is here in Lee County, and it's coming. It's a wave of the future. Thank you.
Yeah, Brian, thank you very, very much indeed. I think all of you in the audience, rather like me, will have learned a considerable amount, not only from our first speaker, but also from Brian and the very interesting things that he's identified. It's also very pleasing. It's very pleasing that we also have Jim Ward here from the Village Council. I'm very happy and very pleased that he's come here. And I'm sure, rather like all of us, will have picked up on a lot of very interesting data and information that we've been able to provide today. So again, Brian, thank you so much for your care and attention on what you've been discovering. What I'd like to do now is to hand over to Joseph Bonasia. Joseph is here. He is, as you see, the Operations and Communications Director for Florida Right to Clean Water. Another very important issue. A lot of us might feel the need for clean water, but it's an important issue for us to understand how we can continue to have it. And so, Joseph, I'm like you to come up and perhaps give us a talk through the points that you wanted to make.
Start.
Good. Thank you. Yep.
Good morning. Pleasure to be here. So I moved to Cape Coral in 2016 to find out that lots of people down here were fighting for clean water. I thought that was a little bit odd. You have to fight for clean water? Who or what are we fighting? How are we fighting? Because I guess it's not working. And then in 2018, 2019, for everyone who was here, I think we all learned very clearly just how much our quality of life, our economy, and our health depend on clean and healthy waters. That's when I started getting involved in this initiative. So, I've been talking about it for a few years now. I have found that even though lots of Floridians feel our waters are not in good shape, they really don't appreciate just how critical a condition our waters are in. So let me share some facts with you. We have nearly 1 million acres of estuaries and 9,000 miles of rivers and streams contaminated with fecal bacteria. Here in Lee County, some of our rivers, the contamination level is 10 times higher than what is healthy. Red tide has exploded in the last 30 years. We've had over 200 months of red tide in Florida. In the previous 116 years, I guess since they started taking records, there were only 64 months of red tide. So it's no longer strictly a natural phenomena. Blue-green algae blooms are now a yearly event. Every summer, Lake Okeechobee is covered with hundreds of square miles of blue-green algae. They do water releases. It comes down to us. In case you don't know, blue-green algae can make you sick. It can lead to permanent neurodegenerative diseases. Recently, Tampa Bay Times did a big investigative report. They found that our waters over the decades have not gotten better. They've gotten worse. And they noted that in the last 10 years, Florida has lost 89,000 acres of seagrass, keystone species. Here in our Estero Bay, we're down to 4% of the bay's historical range for seagrass. No state has more acres of polluted lake water than Florida. No state has lost more acres of wetlands than has Florida. So what are we to do? Well, we try to vote right people into office to do right by our waters. Some of you perhaps will remember former Lee County Commissioner Ray Judah. About 8 months ago, he wrote an op-ed in which he reminded everybody of that common definition for insanity: doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. He's basically said, trying to vote the right people in isn't working. Let's come up with something different or in addition to that. So, up in 2020, in Orange County, those folks did something different. They amended their county charter to do two things. Number one, they gave their waterways rights. The right to exist, to flow, to be free of pollution, to maintain a healthy ecosystem, and they gave every citizen a right to clean water. So what happened? Our legislature very quickly came in and they took those rights away. I should note that 89% of Orange County voters approved that county charter amendment. 9 out of 10. When is the last time 9 out of 10 Americans agreed about anything? They agreed about this. So, but our legislature stepped in and they preempted the authority of local governments to pass laws giving nature any rights or to grant citizens any rights to any aspect of the natural world. So let's be very, very explicit here. Our legislature does not want us to have a right to clean air, healthy climate, or to clean and healthy waters.
Because they've all been bought.
Well, that's a good point. Certainly special interests have undue influence over environmental policy here in Florida. It's not the only reason our waters are in the condition they are in, but it's a very, very important one. So, if they're not going to allow us to work on water quality at the local level, then what do? This preemption, number one, taught us they must really be fearful of how effective a rights-based approach to environmental protection could be, or else they would not have taken up the preemption. And number two, this told us, well, they forced our hand. If we can't work on water quality locally, we have to go over their heads. And the thing that is over their heads is the state constitution. Our original mission was not to amend our state constitution, but we were left with no choice.
I'm sorry, Joseph, excuse me. Are you passing this around for us to sign?
Yep.
What? Can you tell us what this is?
Yep. So give me just a moment.
Okay.
I want to tell you what happened in Pennsylvania in 2011, because Florida is not the only state that has water quality problems, not the only state where special interests have undue influence on environmental policy. Pennsylvania, 2011, very big fracking state. Their legislature passed a law, a notorious piece of legislation called Act 13. It basically allowed or compelled municipalities to allow fracking operations basically anywhere anyone wanted them. If your neighbor wanted to have a fracking pond, no matter what the zoning codes were in that municipality, couldn't stop it. It even came with a gag law. Doctors were not allowed to talk publicly about the impacts they were seeing in their patients from these fracking operations. So, what happened? Much to the credit of some of these small townships, they banded together and they sued their state government. They said that that law was unconstitutional. It went all the way up to their Supreme Court, a conservative Supreme Court, and that court agreed with that. And that was because back in 1972, Pennsylvania voters voted to amend their state constitution to give every citizen a right to clean air, pure waters, and in general, a healthy environment. The ruling was written by the Chief Justice himself. He wanted to make this point. It is not a historic accident that the Pennsylvania Constitution now places citizens' environmental rights on par with their political rights. The political rights he's talking about are those that we hear about every day on the news, in the papers and such. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, right to bear arms, freedom of assembly, and freedom to petition one's government for the redress of grievances. We want what Pennsylvania citizens have, what Montana citizens have, what most recently New York citizens have, and what 20 other states in the nation are trying to get to. Constitutional and environmental rights, because constitutions are the highest level of law and they offer the strongest levels of protection. So what's going around is a petition to amend our state constitution, giving us all a fundamental right to clean and healthy waters, aquifers, bays, lakes, rivers, streams, wetlands, etc. With that right, we can hold our state agencies accountable when they permit, either through action or inaction, harm for our waters. How do they permit harm through action? Well, here's a permit. You can now go build in those wetlands over there. How do they permit through their inaction? Well, we've got lots and lots of great water quality laws. They're not being enforced. How do you get your government to enforce its own laws? That's where this amendment would come in. Yes, sir.
Doesn't our federal constitution give, or can it be determined that it gives these rights?
No. The federal constitution does not give us a right to clean water. It does not. And in fact, right now, lots of federal regulations are being rolled back, as I hope that you are aware. As those federal regulations get rolled back, our constitutional environmental rights to provide us protections we need. This is now more important than ever. So, this is what we're working on. We need 900,000 signed petitions in 2 years' time in order to qualify for the 2026 ballot. It used to be 4 years. Before that, it was 5 years. And then before that, it took as many years as you needed to get the requisite number of petitions. Our legislature has, over the decades, made the citizen initiative process more and more difficult. So, and that leads us to what's going on right now. Because our legislature is never, I shouldn't say never, in foreseeable future, is not going to do what it did last year. Oh, let's have the folks vote on a right to hunt and fish. That was very easy to do. The legislature sponsored it. It went on the ballot. Boom. Voters passed it. They're not going to do that. The clean has the waters. We have to go through the arduous process of getting 900,000 petitions. But now they basically want to kill the citizen initiative process. The House has already passed House Bill 1205. The Senate is poised to pass 7016. They are going to drive a spike into citizen initiatives, basically making them totally impossible to achieve. So then what do we do? Two things must happen. We have to have a public outcry, like we had last August when our parks were at risk, right? Floridians were up and on. Well, powers that be quickly changed their tune. If that doesn't happen, and so I should say my first ask here, action you should take, is to contact the governor's office and tell him to veto any bill that burdens the citizen initiative process. Number two, there's going to be a lawsuit. Anticipate a lawsuit contesting the constitutionality of whatever bill they ultimately picks. If the violation of our First Amendment rights, petition one's government to the interest of grievances. So, I think I probably already took my time. So what I want to say is there's a lot more to be said. In a couple of weeks on May 3rd in Fort Myers at the Collaboratory, Lee County League of Women Voters and Right to Clean Water and the Reset Center are offering a much more in-depth program. I'll be going into more depth there. We will also have a speaker from the ACLU to talk about the history of citizen initiatives in Florida and what the current threat is and what's the potential for protecting the initiative. And if you have your phone, you can go straight to the QR code and you can register there. So, thank you very much.
Well, once again, everyone, I think another very important issue for us to clearly consider very seriously. And thank you, Joseph, for providing that information today. I think we've had 3 amazing speakers on 3 very important topics, and I hope it's been worth your while coming here this evening to listen to those speakers. So please let's give them all a round of applause. I did have some notes up here, but I think they may have disappeared with someone, but never mind. I'm not going to spend much more time. We've just got a couple of minutes left, and I just wanted to cover a few points from an Engage Estero standpoint, if you'd just give me 1 or 2 more moments. I wanted to, first of all, let you know that last month, as some of you may have attended, we had an excellent talk from Steve Sarkozy, the people who have done the traffic survey from Johnson Engineering, and also David Willems was here as well. And that really was a very engaging meeting. We obviously had a lot of attendees, and I'm very pleased to say that the YouTube video that our videographer Wilson has provided for that particular meeting achieved just over currently 500 views. So it was clearly a very important topic, one that obviously we had a lot of information from. I shared with David Willems a number of questions, and he was here, of course, to talk about them. But he has also responded to several of the people who had concerns. Some of the people, for instance, at Villa Palmeiras, who were concerned about the blockage of their entrance at the peak times, has been addressed, at least in terms of some proposals by David. And also he shared with me, which I passed on to the people at let me see, oh dear. I know the people who were concerned about the entrance and exit close to Walmart were very concerned. I'm just trying to think of the gated community there. It's just gone to my head for a minute. But also I've passed on that information. One of the things that we will have coming up at our next meeting in May, and I wanted to tell you all about that, is, of course, the village has probably spent and is spending the largest amount of investment that they have made yet since they were incorporated at the end of 2014 in the Sports and Recreational Park, which is, of course, on the northeast corner of Via Coconut and Williams Road. It's a very large area, as you can see. It's 100 acres, and there are a very number of reasons for that. And Steve Sarkozy and his team will explain the plans that are going to take place there. I think it'll be a very engaging and an interesting meeting. And certainly I urge all of you here today and those who are listening to the video to come along on that particular date, which is still here on May the 23rd. We've been thinking about a number of other key things. We hear, obviously, from a lot of feedback from you about things that you feel are important. And I know that a number of people which mentioned to me recently, another point that I've already shared with the village management and also mentioned at one of the village meetings recently, the concern that some people have about where is Estero headed. What's really the future plans that we're going to see with the buildings that are taking place, potential perhaps acquisition of gated communities that are interested, of course, in being part of Estero. So where is it going? Where is it going to end? And I think it's a very interesting topic, a very important topic for all of us. And I'm hoping that we will have perhaps a much larger meeting to have this discussed, possibly over at FGC or one of their large meetings there. So I want to get that sorted out in the near future, and obviously you'll be hearing more about that in the days ahead. One last thing, obviously we strive very hard to do all that we can with the budget that we have available. These meetings don't get done by accident, and certainly the larger meetings, the public forums that we put together, certainly don't. And of course, the fact that we only really provide very important factual information for you to understand and to obviously provide a basis for your own judgment. Sometimes that requires, various specialists that we require to look at certain information for us and provide an independent summary of what they believe is in our best interests. We have our own thoughts, but of course it's important to have experts in various fields, particularly those in environmental issues. We just heard, of course, a little bit about that from Joseph. Areas on the traffic side and development side, all of those things we have our own opinions, but it's important to have paid independent consultants evaluate those things that we can share important factual information, and that takes a lot of money. So we are on our mission to actually move our funding from what is currently around about $60,000 a year up to an investment in what we do of about $400,000 over the next 3 years, on each of the next 3 years. And part of that money we also want to try and provide to people in need at the time of serious, hurricanes and serious issues that might affect people. We were able to obviously do that after Hurricane Ian, but we didn't have the money to provide immediate action, and it was very hurtful to see many of the people who wrote to us asking if we could help here in Estero, which unfortunately we weren't able to do immediately. So hopefully with your help and with your guidance to other people that you see, and even perhaps emails that you share with your friends and neighbors, we'd very much like you to pass on that information. I know Terry has passed around some of the little brochures that we have about this, which explains where we would like to obviously have an allocation of that money. But it is important to us. We are, of course, all of us independent individuals. We've had our experience in our various companies that we've run, but we take no money from Engage Estero at all. We're all volunteers. The only person that does is the person who handles our website and, of course, runs a company to be able to provide that service to you. And even there, we have something like 4,000 hits on our website every month. And we already have, as some of you may know, but maybe you don't, that we have something like 12,000 people here in Estero who have signed up to receive our communications. Kim tells me that normally when you send out communications to an email list, the average open rate is usually around 16 or 17%. That, you may say, is pretty measly, but it's the truth. That's the average. Our email open rate is at roughly 52% on average. It illustrates that you, as residents here in Estero, really enjoy what we do. We try and provide very important information to you. And of course, I think today probably hits a chord. It does to me about the wonderful people out there who are doing amazing things that we don't know about that affects us on a day-to-day basis until we hear from them. It really is amazing. And on that note, I would like to thank you all really for coming here today, spending your time, learning about what we do, and I wish you a very good rest of the day. Thank you.